Hi, everyone. This is Craig Zelzer from PCDN. Happy Friday if you are approaching your weekend. Delighted to be here with Spencer Campbell today to talk about recruitment and social impact, kind of everything you wanted to know or why, what you believe may not be accurate. And so both insights from someone who is a leading recruiter who's going to talk about career paths in the impact space, but also, how to better interact with recruiters and demystify the process. This is season 10, episode 11. So happy 11th episode. For people who have not been on the Social Change Career podcast live stream previously, just a couple of logistical notes. So this generally goes for an hour. We love to have lots of interactions. So particularly on LinkedIn, if you're watching, please put in the chat box where you're watching from and maybe a sentence or two about your background. And then we'd love to also to have questions and comments come in. So feel free to put questions, comments. Try to be a little specific. Don't just ask, how do I get a job? Or, but try to specify it a little bit. This will be converted to one of our episodes of the Social Change Career podcast in about 3 weeks. And we have over 100 episodes with brilliant innovators from all around the world doing honest career conversations about impact careers, both the good and the challenges. And apart from just watching this now or listening in the future, the one thing that would really help us is if you take a minute to rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen, Apple, Spotify, Podcast Addict, and that's about it. So I'm joining from Medellin, Colombia. Spencer is in Lyon, France. And prior to our chat, we were just talking about the wonders of French food. So I was fortunate to teach in Paris a month this summer, and I was sharing with Spencer that we were hugging our bakery people, before we left, just because there's almost nothing in the world as good as like French baguettes and cheese and that stuff. So Spencer is a social impact professional who's made it his mission to help people find impact jobs. He's the founder and chief talent agent, not of a movie studio, but of the Spencer Campbell Talent Agency, which has just recently launched, a company that represents social impact professionals, just like a Hollywood talent agency. The company and Spencer makes the job search as painless as possible for their clients by helping them find the best opportunities and basically advocating and representing the talent. He's interviewed thousands of people and helped hire hundreds over the course of his career, having been on both sides of the table. He's had an impressive career in the social impact space before founding the Spencer Campbell Talent Agency. He worked for One Acre Fund, which is one of the leading social enterprises that is helping to scale both kind of, small scale farming to help it bring it to scale to increase income for farmers across Africa. And he helped build out the talent pipeline. I think they have 8,000 employees now. He also served as a teacher and a Peace Corps volunteer. He has a degree in economics and math from Michigan State University. He loves to learn languages, cooking, and his dog Chai. Maybe you'll share us a picture. And Spencer, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. And just a couple of people welcome: Naomi from Nigeria, Imam from Canada, Mariam from Iran. And again, please, as we're going through this, let us know where you're watching from, your questions, your comments. Share. Also, just tag and share this with others on LinkedIn if they might want to join us. So Spencer, thank you for joining us in your time early afternoon. And can you talk a little bit about how in the world did you wind up in talent? And what do you think has been the focus of the type of impact you've been seeking in your career?
Yeah, so like you said, I actually started my career as a teacher in the Peace Corps, and I kind of came into talent and recruiting accidentally. I really wanted to work for One Acre Fund, and the opportunity that was available was as sort of a talent scout. And I thought, you know what, I'll give this a try, see how it goes. And it turned out to be a good match. Meeting people, helping them find the right opportunities, uh, just getting to hear people's stories and figure out where they belong. It was something that really moved me. I ended up being quite drawn to it, and so it's been a theme throughout my career, and making things better for people who are trying to get a job and trying to make the world a better place. Yeah.
But how did you go from, let's say, educator, Peace Corps volunteer, and Peace Corps? Which country were you in, and were you doing ESL, economic development? Then, like when you were younger, did you think about because a lot of people in the social impact space, a lot of times people envision they want to be in the front lines of making change. And there's so many ways to make change. And, we always say to people, like, all impact requires, designers and graphic designers and admin and finance and money people. And, one of the most important things for social impact organizations, whether for-profit or nonprofit, is building healthy talent pipelines and healthy work environments. And so the work, there's a lot on the volunteer side and social activism, but professional organizations can't function without talent. So did you think, how did you go from initially, let's say, education, Peace Corps, to where did you first learn about talent, or something you studied, and how did you build your way into it?
Yeah, so it wasn't I studied math, so it was sort of and when I joined the Peace Corps, so for anyone who doesn't know, it's a program that it's a volunteering opportunity for Americans who want to go abroad and use their skills in a volunteering context. It's a 2-year assignment, and most people go home after that. But for me, I really I was placed in Ghana in West Africa, and I just had such a warm welcome there that I wanted to find a way to stay. And so for me, and I think this is maybe relevant for a lot of job seekers, it was figuring out what I could offer in the space. What could I, how did my skills fit in to what employers were looking for? And after Peace Corps, I had worked for a grassroots nonprofit helping students, hiring and placing volunteers, and helping Ghanaian students who wanted to study overseas. We're trying to get scholarships and help to get into universities abroad. And so working with people, managing teams, kind of screening and evaluating people's fit for certain assignments, it was something that, something I ended up enjoying, and something that, as I thought about building this impact career, I used to tell people all the time, I would have swept the floors if it meant I would able to get this opportunity with this organization that I really respected. So for me, the mission that we were advancing, it was clear to me that what I was doing, we used to say as a team, recruitment starts, impact starts with us as the recruiting team. We have to get people in the door, help them find the opportunities. So even though we weren't out in the field with the farmers directly, we knew that the work we were doing, bringing great people into the mission, that was going to advance the cause. And it made me feel good. I could see clearly the difference, the people that we would find and see how they succeeded. We as recruiters, that really made me very happy. I found it fulfilling, and I knew it was creating a strong positive impact. So I was drawn to continue to grow in this field. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm just going to welcome a few more people. Welcome Kay from Baltimore, Lena from Kalamazoo, Nesreen from Algeria, and I think there's a few other people. So please keep letting us know where you're zooming in from, and feel free to start putting in your questions. Mariam from Iran. So before we get into kind of the job functions of a recruiter, can you just share a little bit about, for people who don't know One Acre Fund, what it is, and when you joined, what was the size of the staff, and let's say the number of job openings on a yearly basis, and when you moved on to other roles, how much did it scale, and what was the contribution of you and your team to helping it get from small to pretty big impact?
Yeah, sure. So when I joined, so I was there. I was maybe the third person hired on the recruiting team, and when I left the company about 6 years later, there were like 30, 35 or so people on the team. On the organization as a whole, we grew from around 1,600 staff to over, I think now it's over 9,000 staff today. But it was really that period of just explosive growth as the organization expanded to new countries, really grew rapidly in Kenya and Rwanda, and grew to serve 1 million from around 100,000 farm family clients to 1 million clients, when I left. So just, many people played a part in growing that organization, and my role was quite limited, but frankly, I spent a lot of time over my career there thinking about how do we make things better, more efficient? How do we give people the fairest process we can? How do we get how do we get people coming from all sorts of backgrounds? How do we make opportunities for young people? So I designed and oversaw an internship program called the Young Professionals Program, which would ultimately place around 100 interns in 6 different countries. Many of those are still working with the organization today, and many have moved on to really impressive roles with the UN and other, social impact organizations. So just seeing where those young professionals went, that was really gratifying, and maybe one of the biggest contributions I made while I was there.
We have a bunch more people coming. So again, I'll just do some quick welcomes. So Sammy from Kenya, welcome. Irina from Spain, Nicole from Denver, Maria Julia from Brazil, Alan from Tanzania, Sabine from Germany, and Santos from Rwanda. So please also feel free to put a sentence or two about your interest or work, and also tag your organization. And I'll ask 1 or 2 more questions. I can ask a million questions, but also please feel free to start putting your own questions. You want to, this is a great opportunity to learn from a person who has tremendous expertise in the social impact talent space. So just one more question about One Acre Fund, not so much on recruitment, but when you left, what is the impact of the organization? So there's the staff to, let's say go up almost 6 times in size of staff and expand to countries and reach over 1 million farmers. But, I know Andrew, I forgot his last name, but the founder is very focused on metrics. So if you had to say, obviously you're part of a huge team, but what is is the focus on doubling income of small scale farm or people working in agriculture? What's the collective impact? You could say, as a team, in the 6 years you were there, you saw them help X number of farmers increase their income, by double, or get more exports, or just what is the impact of the organization as a whole?
Yeah, no, this is great. So this is something I kept, this focus on metrics, focus on really holding ourselves accountable to what impact we do deliver. And so, and I don't know how much of this is still true, but I imagine basically all of it. But we measured impact by how prosperous the people who worked with One Acre Fund were. So did they see an increase in their harvest? Did they see more food on their table? Did they see returns to their family, kids going to school? Really dollars and cents in the size of the harvest. This was actually what was measured, and on average, people who joined it, they would it would be a doubling of income. It really was a life-changing amount of money, and this is why clients came back year after year, is because it really made a real difference in their life. We talked a lot about a hunger season. Many clients who would sign up would face hunger because their farms were not productive enough to feed the family. After they started working, they didn't face that anymore. It was a really sort of anyway. It's been a while since I've been in this, but I really felt proud of the again, the small part I was able to play in growing this organization, helping it reach farmers more effectively and serve them prosperously. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, Anthony from Ghana, and Irina works for the Young Presidents Organization. And again, feel free to share a little bit about your own organizations. Please don't ask for a job, but we'd love to hear from you. So one question, when you just think about talent in general, what does it mean to have a career helping recruit talent? So what are the career paths? If someone's what makes someone a good person to work in recruitment? Do they need to be outgoing, organized, and what are the career paths? Because again, a lot of people don't realize this is and also the difference between talent and human resources. So what would you say are the career paths for people who want to work in talent? What skills do they need? And then, what are the general career paths? Someone starts at a small NGO, and what could they potentially work up to if they stay in the talent space?
Cool. Yeah. So in fast growing organizations, recruitment might be its own function because there's just so many vacancies, and there's just it's kind of a different thing. In a more slow growing organization, it will just be a potentially part of a larger HR team that does other support in addition to recruiting or talent acquisition. But I've probably hired around 100 recruiters over the course of my career, and generally people who make good recruiters. I mean, maybe this is the first thing that candidates don't realize is that, the recruiter, the people who are really good at it, and pretty much everyone I've met in the industry who does recruiting for a living, they really care about the candidates. We really get behind the people. We want to say yes to everybody. We just want people to find where they belong. And the recruiter, the person your first interview at an organization, that person is your best advocate. That person, get that person on your side, and you're going to go far. That's what makes this, what makes it worth it to be in talent, is seeing how people succeed and get connected. But so yeah, if you want to succeed as a recruiter, I think like genuinely caring about people, you have to, of course, it helps to be extroverted and outgoing. I'm actually quite introverted, and so it can be hard to do that part of the job, to be on the phone all day. But being organized, being sort of just a good read of people. You have to understand, where does somebody fit in? What do they want? And then it's matchmaking, right? You're a matchmaker. You're trying to figure out what the hiring team is looking for, figuring out what the candidate brings to the table, and hey, are those going to be a good match? That's what it is at the end of the day.
Wonderful. And Kay, thanks for sharing about International Medical Corps. If you are a recruiter, feel free to tag your own organization and or just mention any openings, because it's a great place to interact with potential candidates. Again, please share your questions and comments. And can you just also say a little bit, not everyone would understand the difference between human resources and recruitment. And, so it's basically like, if you think about sports, like you're the ones recruiting the people. My son's a soccer obsessed, very competitive soccer player. So, the dream is like, a lot of the kids on his team, they dream about being professional players. Maybe one might make it, but so you're like the person out there scouting and getting the talent. And then once they're on the team, the HR takes over in terms of like salary, benefits, or just so people are clear about the distinction, or sometimes is it one office?
Yeah. So again, I think it really depends on the size of the organization and how quickly it's growing. So it could be that some people who work as recruiters, it's just one part of their job. They also provide other HR, so human resources or people, is it sometimes called it, people operations or people. It's supporting the employees the whole time they're working at the company. So this could be performance management, compensation, benefits, making sure that payroll runs on time. And then when we talk about recruiting, talent acquisition, it's this specific thing around, finding anything having to do with finding a job and finding where finding your fit within the organization.
So one question, just to start off with, in terms of what are, let's say, the top 3 or 4 things that you would like to demystify in specifically for social impact recruitment? So like when the things you almost wish that people would understand from a recruiter's point of view or the candidate's point of view to maybe make it a little bit easier for candidates.
Yeah. So I mean, the first thing I sort of already shared, but it is, everyone's just trying to help you find a match, right? I would ask everybody, both anyone who applies for a job, don't take it personally, whatever you hear back from the team. I've never met a recruiter who didn't want to see the job applicant succeed and really didn't just care deeply about people, And so recruiters on your side, you guys are working together. And, I think it's so frustrating. It can be hard to be a job seeker, right? Like it can be a tough thing to go through that process, to face rejection, to feel like you have to put yourself out there every week, feel like you're being judged. And I just want to let job seekers know that on the other side of the table, someone's pulling you. If you had an interview with me, I'd want you to do as best as you possibly could, because, I really just want to get a good match. And so, as you go through this process, having as much empathy and understanding for the recruiter, for everyone you interact with, I think that's going to put you in a great headspace to succeed on your interviews. The second thing I talk about is just sort of, you probably don't need to spend nearly as much time on your resume as you think you do. I would spend that time networking. People are receptive. You reach out to hiring managers or recruiters. You make a polite request. You don't waste people's time. You have something specific that you're trying to find out. This sort of think about networking as building authentic relationships. You're trying to figure out if you want to work at this company, and the best way to figure that out is to talk to people who work in that organization, or if it's a big organization, that specific department or team. You want to find out if this is the place that might be a good fit for you. And the best way to do that is to talk to people who are there. And you'll find that when you reach out to people, they're overwhelmingly very receptive to a conversation. I used to be so scared about this before I got into talent. You feel like people won't get back to you, or they might, maybe it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, as long as you're polite and don't waste people's time. We'd love to have a conversation, right? Like, don't be afraid to reach out to the hiring manager or the recruiter. Yeah.
So can you talk about, let's say, a mid-level role, whether it's something you've helped recruit for recently, in your consulting work or with a client or anywhere in your experience, just break down the logistics, so from crafting a job description to where does it go, to how many applications on average do you get? How do you filter those applications? Like, just so like a job seeker can understand like how their application fits into this whole process. And then, if you get 200 or 1,000 applications, how do you decide, or your team decide, who to interview? And then what makes people stand out? So basically, like the step-by-step, like where's the job description come from? Like there has to be a budget, who crafts it, you help it, where do you distribute it? And just like, what are the key steps here that a job seeker might want to understand?
This is a really good question. And I think, it's not clear always, and I've written on LinkedIn about this in different capacities. I encourage everyone to follow me on LinkedIn, and you can go and read some of this stuff on, what are some things that you won't find on a job description that you need to understand if you want to work somewhere. And then recently I put out a post on like the story of your CV. What happens when you hit apply, basically? And, one thing to keep in mind is just manage your expectations. If on average, there might be 200 other applicants for the same role. And so, if you had 200 people who had approached you and were interested in buying something from you, you might have a hard time figuring out who you should sell that to. You would have to have some sort of process to zero in on who might be a better fit. And so everything that's kind of uncomfortable and annoying about going through the job search process, it has to do with solving that problem. This is a tough issue for the recruiting team, for the hiring team. It's just hard for anybody to make the time to interview 200 people. And so this is why, you submit a resume that, and that's used to make the first cut. So you're not writing for robots when you write your resume. A human being will read it if it's going to get read. Sadly, not every resume you submit is going to get read. Sometimes the role is filled and they just haven't taken the job post down, that sort of thing. But your audience is a very busy human who really wants you to succeed, and it is just looking for somebody who is plausible for the role. So if you want to know if you have a good resume for a certain opening, the best thing to do is to put your resume down if it's a piece of paper. Increasingly, it's just, it's all digital. So look at your resume for maximum 15 or 30 seconds and just see what jumps out at you. What are the keywords that pop out? Where is the eye drawn on the page? This is the way the recruiter is making that first scan. And so in those first 15 or 30 seconds does it match what job you've applied for? Does it seem like, oh, you're plausible for the kind of roles that you're applying for? It seems like you're a good match with what's in the job description. That's probably a resume that's going to get a closer look by the recruiter. And of course, before they invite you to an interview, they're going to read it much more closely. But that very first touch point, for most recruiters, it's going to be a very brief scan. And that's where they're making a decision. Who do I spend more time on? Who do I talk to? Who do I follow up with? I don't know. Is that helpful, Craig?
Yeah, and then just a little bit more questions are starting to come in. But then, so if you get 200 applicants, how many do you filter down to that you might interview and screen, and then like what's so is it 10%, 5%, and then in general, obviously each organization is different, but some have competency or writing tests, but is it most organizations it's still like 2 to 3 interviews or just a little bit, and then is it generally they get down to 2 or 3 final candidates, and what makes the difference between those things?
Yeah, for sure. So, at some points in my career, I was recruiting for vacancies where there were 800 applicants for every single person posted. So that's quite competitive. That's elite university level of competition, right? That's just really hard. And I would say in general, most jobs that you might be applying to, there might be between 100 to 200 other applicants. And of that, maybe 10%, so 10 to 20 people are going to get a closer screening by the recruiter and then moving through the rest of the stages. So maybe an exercise, and maybe an interview with the hiring team, maybe some sort of on-site interview in the office, maybe a short exercise. Those would be the steps. But the biggest cut is actually at the beginning. It's picking who are those finalists that are going to be. So over the course of my career, I looked at different ways. If you've ever had to take a test as part of a recruitment process, this is actually something that's helpful for you, because it gives the company or the organization another way to look at your skill set that's might be more fair to you, might do a better job representing you than a piece of paper. Looking at a piece of paper and making a decision about somebody, it's a really hard thing to do. So all the other stuff that you're asked to fill out in a job search or asked to do, it's trying to give the hiring team more context to get to know you in different ways and better ways, so that they can make a fair decision. So the steepest cut is definitely at that first stage, and this is why networking and trying to meet people within the company who could refer you, because that would give you a sort of a connection to kind of make sure you get that first interview. Once you make it to the interview stage, so you're talking to somebody, nobody's really looking at your resume anymore, because they know it doesn't really represent you as well as an interview or an exercise might. So once you're in the door, it's not really about your resume anymore. It's about the interview and what you're doing as you're engaging with the hiring team.
Okay, wonderful. So questions are starting to come in. Thanks, Lena. She's interested in remote volunteering internship work and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Where do you start? So she's in graduate school and wants to get some more experience. So I guess, one, do you have any advice for how people can find internships, ideally paid or sometimes unpaid? And then particularly things that are remote, or things you would recommend people currently in undergrad or grad school do to build more professional experience to make them more hireable, or at least more employers will take a deeper look.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a big fan of paid internships, a big anti-fan, whatever the opposite. I don't think unpaid internships are ethical or a good idea. Emma May on LinkedIn, you can follow her. She publishes on a regular basis lists of paid internships. I think all over the world. Honestly, she's got good coverage in Europe and Africa and the U.S. And there are definitely those paid internships out there. I think I will be honest, like, this is the hardest, search, that, getting that first opportunity. It can be a real challenge. And I think if you're open to volunteering, particularly at like grassroots organizations, people who don't have the budget to hire anybody, but you're passionate about a certain issue or a certain cause, if you can reach out to those organizations and say, hey, I have time, I'm a student, I'm really interested in what you're doing, is there a way I can help? A lot of people are quite receptive to that. That was sort of how I ended up in my first job after Peace Corps, was reaching out to an organization saying, hey, I think I can help you. I have these connections in the Peace Corps. I really love what you're doing. I'm really passionate about education. I'd love to be a part of it. And they said yes. And eventually that led to a job with them. So I do think, if you have the time, if you have the ability, just finding a way to give your skills, share what you have in a volunteer context, that's a great thing to do. Incidentally, it's a good way to get a job, but it's also just a good thing for the world. Imagine if nothing comes of it. Well, great. You've still helped a phenomenal organization that, that could use your help. You've helped advance their goals, and you can feel good about that.
It's also a good way to test out. I mean, obviously, if you're working in life-threatening situations, no. That's a good way to test out, like, if you want to do fundraising or project management, as long as it's not like high stakes. So you might, I know lots of people who think they want to do something and they test it out and it's bad. So it's a little bit less stressful than kind of committing to a job. So next question is from Nesreen, I think from Algeria. She's been a translator, interpreter. She's looking for professional retraining. So I would put this at a broader level, obviously something with Nesreen, but what do you advise people who maybe have been working in a particular skill set or sector, and let's say they've got 5-10 years experience and they're looking to upskill for other jobs or sectors? Is it grad school, fellowships, learn on your own? Like what do recruiters seek? So if someone's done something but they're trying to pivot, like, do you want formal certification, or like what should someone do when they've already had the training but now they need more?
Yeah, it's a really good question. A lot of this depends on a case by case basis, but it really should start with what do you want? Where are you trying to go? What would you like to do in your new career? What are your goals? And I think once you have a clear picture on those, the next steps would be more clear. For people moving into a technical career, there are things like boot camps or these sort of retraining programs. Sometimes graduate school could be an option. It really depends on where you're at now and what you're trying to move into. I would say as a recruiter, as long as there's that case that you're going to be plausible fit for the new role, for the new career, I would never try to hide it. Really put it out there in your materials that you're switching into a new profession, and try to do those things to build up that credibility and competence as you begin applying for that first search. I think to have never done, and I don't think anybody's doing this, but like the most extreme example, if you spent your whole career doing one thing and then you just start applying for jobs in a completely different field, it would be hard for a recruiter to respond to that. You need to make a case. A case needs to be made that you're well qualified for this new role that you're switching into, and unless you make that case, people aren't going to be very responsive. So understanding how your old skills are recontextualized in your new field. How do people in the field you're moving into, how do they think about the work? What do they value? What's the language they use to talk about it? And figuring out how what you were doing before applies in the new context, if at all. If it doesn't, often a graduate school could be an important step for someone on this journey. I think, Craig, you can probably speak to this, you can probably add a few things on this particular subject, I think, but that would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Spencer said, it's very context specific, but everyone is saying the number one skill to stay hireable and competitive and employed is continuous learning. So the idea, there's still some sectors where you might learn and join the civil service and have a job forever, but things are changing so fast that just continuously upskilling, which is exhausting, but also exhilarating. So I think part of it is like just build in some time. Hopefully, if you have a full-time job, your employer gives you some professional development training and funding. So you take advantage of that. Like, don't let that money go to waste. Or if you're a student, when I was doing my PhD, like we had travel budgets. If we presented at conferences, like they would help subsidize it. So look at all the funding opportunities you have. And between LinkedIn Learning and Coursera and edX and Philanthropy University and Acumen Academy and their podcasts, there's so many ways to learn now. And there's lots of great training programs, in all different sectors, but always vet them. And one of the things is always look at the cost of both time and money investment versus the potential return. And I'll just give one quick example. So lots of people want to be mediators. Mediation is great. I'm trained as a mediator. I never got certified, but so many people I know who want to go into mediation have this fantasy they're going to get a job as a mediator. And one of the things to always look at is like the demand side of like where the money and opportunities are versus the supply side. And so I did a chapter a couple of years ago with one of my RAs on mediation careers. And I'd always been looking for this data because I had this impression, but I actually found someone who found data, and so it's like, try to find the data on both the sector and skills, because particularly with, the rapid growth in all these AI tools, some sectors are going to fade away. And new things will be created. So try to not be overly strategic, but make sure you're getting the skills and knowledge and competencies for where the growth will be, and that you're not getting trained for the jobs that are going to disappear or just be 2,000 applicants per role. So I want to ask a question, then we got a couple more coming in. So salary negotiations. I'll give one quick story, then I'd love to hear your tips. So, I've hired people, I've negotiated successfully also been hired many times, and sometimes it's negotiated great, other times complete failure. And so once I hired somebody as part of a team, and I really liked the person, they were a top candidate, and in our budget, I had a lot of oversight over the budget, we could have paid them probably $5,000 more. That person didn't negotiate. So the nice human part of me was like, it'd be nice if she negotiated, but I'm not going to offer them the money. And the bureaucratic side of me is like, okay, they didn't negotiate. It was a good salary, but that means I have that money to do something else or hire someone else. So can you just talk a little bit from the recruiter or the hiring person? Some organizations are doing more just like, this is what we pay. But do you want people to advocate for themselves? And what are your recommendations? Because a lot of should they always try? And then what are the ways that work to get an increase? And as a human being and a recruiter, from the budget side, do you want to keep the salary less because there's more money for elsewhere?
Okay. Yeah, all really good questions. I feel like we could have a whole podcast just about this topic. So first thing I'll say about salary negotiation is, well, what determines your salary? You need, and I think this isn't necessarily a natural way to think about, what you're doing when you get a job, but you're basically selling your services. You're a vendor. You're selling your time and your expertise. And so if you were a farmer taking tomatoes to the market, the guy next to you sells his tomatoes for $1, and the other guy, someone else, another vendor, is selling it for $3. That's really the range. If you try to sell for $10, no one's going to buy your tomatoes, right? There is a real market for your skills, and whether you're working in a nonprofit or a company or a government agency, it's that market for your skill set that really determines a big part of what you could be paid. And so different industries, different locations will pay different things. But if you want to dramatically change your salary, you may have to change your skill set, change what you're offering, sell something different. And similarly, different companies or organizations approach salary differently. Some might have a fixed, very narrow band of what's possible for a given role. It's tightly defined by the HR team, by the regulations. For some international organizations like the UN, you can go and find the salary scale online and figure out precisely what a role could be paid according to that published salary scale. Other organizations, it's a much more fluid conversation. So you need to know kind of how does the organization that you're applying for, considering how do they set salary? And the best way to get this information is just talk to people who work there. So if you're a job seeker and you want, so that's what I would say. It's a lot of it's market driven, no matter what sector you're in, and that you have to understand how your salary is going to be negotiated. And then finally, it never hurts to ask. Okay, no one is going to withdraw your offer because you asked for more money. And if asking for 10% more, it's never going to hurt you as a candidate. And for most organizations, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference, right? And I think, I'm hoping we're moving towards more salary transparency across the board, which makes it simpler for everybody. I love that as a recruiter, when we just didn't have to talk about this. Everybody knew from the very beginning what the salary was, what was possible. But, unless there's broad scale, wide ranging changes in the law all over the world, this won't be the case for everybody anytime soon. So you really need to find out during your process, through your own research, through your own network, what is this job, what's possible in this job, and what is, how does this company approach salary setting? And then don't reveal your salary history unless you absolutely have to. In many markets, it's illegal to ask you what your salary history is, but never reveal it. Okay, don't tell anybody what you make. The only reason people are trying to ask you that question is to pay you less. So just don't reveal your salary history and ask for a market rate. Okay.
Wonderful. So lots of questions are coming in, but just one other question. Because some employers say, tell us your salary expectations. I hate that. Like it's usually for more senior level, mid-level jobs. And so how do you decide when an employer says, like, tell us your expectations, and you can deduce what a fair range is, but what do you advise? Like, when in a cover letter or that kind of response, so let's say you're a great potential match, you love the company, organization, but it's like they're not being transparent. What do you advise a candidate to do in that area?
Yeah, I advise tit for tat. So don't, again, be as cagey, be non-committal, and say, I trust that you're a great organization and you're going to pay me the market value of my skills. I will consider any reasonable offer made from your side. In the Teal application, which is like a great app for any job seeker, there is a whole series of videos on salary negotiation, which gives some different things you can say. You can put in your emails, you can put in a cover letter when it comes to this question. But absolutely, they're get them to tell you what's possible, what the budget is, and if it doesn't meet your requirements, you don't think it meets the market based on your own research, tell them as much. And if they come back with a better offer, great. If they don't, maybe it's just not going to work. So, but that would be my advice on this. And again, as these laws changes, I hope that these conversations become easier for everybody, and there's just a lot less game playing around salary from employers. Yeah.
Kay is saying, in LA and New York, in some places they're saying you have to post the range, even though sometimes the ranges are crazy. Just one super quick story, then we'll move on to other questions. So I interviewed once for a job in New York organization. I knew them, they liked me, I liked them. They didn't post the salary, and I was very well qualified, and we had a great first interview. They said, come up to New York the next week. And this is like 20, 30, 25 years ago. And I was like, will you pay for my train ticket? And they said, no. And that was a red flag. And then I said, can you share the salary level? They shared it. I just said, forget it. Like, I wasn't being egotistical, but sometimes it's better just not, like, there was no way I would move to New York for that range. So sometimes, so one other question here. So let's say you go through the first interview, like, when is it appropriate if the employer doesn't bring up salary? When is it appropriate to at least raise the range? Because in the first interview, it seems a little bit egotistical. Like, I waited till after but like, as a candidate, if the employer is not sharing it, but just not to waste people's time, like, what can you bring it up, or it's better for the employer to actually make an offer and then you decide?
Yeah. So I think that's a great strategy. It's fine not to bring it up in that first screening interview. If you get to that screening interview and they ask you to move to a second round, meeting the hiring manager, doing an exercise, spending a significant amount of your time, you can ask at that phase, what are we talking about? Please give me more information about this. And again, totally reasonable to ask about it. And a non-committal response at that point, you should take it as a red flag. This would be my other big tip on salary stuff, is sort of don't interview one by one. Go through all the processes at the same time. Apply for 20 different things, interview with all of them simultaneously. Because what you want to do when you get to the offer stage, the best thing you can have when you get to the offer stage as a candidate is multiple offers. Because then, of course, it's no longer a conversation between you and one employer. Now it's a bidding war, because you're terrific. Well, lots of people want you. FOMO is a real thing, fear of missing out. Now they know how great you are, and now it's like, oh, okay, we might have to do something. I've definitely been on the other side of this and have chased, candidates that I wanted to close. I really wanted to bring them aboard, and I knew they had competing offers, and that unlocked additional budget to make them an offer. So it's really a great tool to have that competing offer, to have something. So maybe that's from your current employer, maybe that's from another employer, another job that you're seeking, but it certainly is helpful. And again, if companies are not giving you information about this early on in the process, take it as the kind of warning sign that it is. Yeah.
One last question, and then we'll move on to a few questions from participants. So in salary negotiations, in my mind, I generally think it's okay to ask for about 10% more, sometimes 15%. Obviously it depends on the offer. If it's horrible, you can go much higher. But do you have like a range if someone gets an offer like, obviously you have to make an evidence-based case. You can't say, give me more money. You have to say, I speak 3 languages or manage these budgets. Like, if you just say, give me more money, people are going to laugh. But if you say, like, you have to provide a compelling story and data and, and kind of narrative. But what do you advise? Like, what's the reasonable range if the offer's fair that a recruiter would not run away? That's almost the expectation on your end, that like it's normal to ask for 10% more, maybe you get 5, or you should go for 50. Like, what is the range that you recommend? And I'm not quoting, like, I don't want people to say Spencer told me to do this and they go to their next negotiation and they ask for too much or too little, but like just a general range.
Yeah, for sure. So don't feel like you have to. If you were, if they've made you an offer that meets your expectations, is comfortable for you, and you're okay with that, don't feel like you have to do this just because you feel like it's what they do. It's also, no one would ever look unfavorably on a candidate who says, hey, I think I deserve 10% more for this reason, that reason, that reason. And if the budget's available, so sometimes, and again, this is why it's important to do your research on how do they set salary. Maybe they're at the very top of the band. You were expensive based on how they set salaries internally. They've offered you literally as much as they can do according to the rules of that organization, and they can't give you any more. And they should explain that to you if that's the case. And if salaries are set according to these sort of bands, that could be the issue. If it's a firm where there's more flexibility in how salaries are set, then you can be you have a lot of leverage at this point as a candidate. They really want you, right? There's been 200 people that have applied. There's just a few who've made it to this stage. It might be you, and it might only be you, really. You might be the only viable person, or maybe there's 2 or 3 other people. They really want you, okay? If this is the time to ask for what you want, and maybe you negotiate for more salary, but also maybe 10% more money won't make you as happy as asking for another week's vacation, or asking for more flexibility in the way you work, or asking for something else. There are other things that you could negotiate for that might make a bigger difference in your life than a little bit more compensation. Again, most of what you can get paid, the majority of that salary is going to be set further upstream, where you applied, what kind of skills that you bring to the market, the kind of organization you're working for, the industry that you're in. These are the things that determine a larger portion of what you can be paid. This negotiation at the end, it's a very small part of it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's always important to look at the whole package. Can you work hybrid, remote? Do you get professional development? Do you actually get health insurance in the US because the system's crazy? So Sammy, I think from Kenya, asked the question, is that basically what Sammy is saying, that if you're an experienced logistics professional or someone else, that often people go with closed networks. So this is like an ethical challenge. There's all this talk about you need to network. But then, like, what about equity in hiring and kind of blind? What do you advise people? Because a lot of times people go with the people they know, or some places it's not based on the qualified person; it's based on political recommendations or other considerations. So, how do recruiters avoid that, and what's your advice to candidates?
Yeah, so I would recommend everybody work for places that hire according to merit-based processes, right? So, there are some organizations, and again, like, this is true all over the world, right? Like, it's sort of, the decisions are not made based on merit. They're made based on some other consideration. You don't want to work for an organization like that. Organizations like that are not going to perform as well. Your opportunities for growth are not going to be as you might see elsewhere. The way you need to think about networking as a candidate is that you're letting the world know how great you are as a person, right? People have to know the work you're doing. If you're just working hard and nobody knows about it, it will. The point of it is to expand your circle, to get to have the chance to demonstrate your skills. So if you wanted to, you feel like you're being excluded from these processes, it's the advice would be try to find ways to expand the network. Are there logistics professional groups or organizations that you could be a part of and go and try to meet people? Are there other types of organizations? Are there people? Most of the time we find jobs that we might be a good fit through our weak ties, not the people we're closest to, but people we know only incidentally. People from church, people from your communities, just finding out if they know about opportunities that you might not know about. And I think if you really work hard to expand your network, you'll find opportunities that you didn't know about before, and that will lead to more success. Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So next question, I think Maria Julia, I think she's based in Brazil. What about in the context of entry-level positions for undergrad students or internships? So she often sees social impact positions wanting at least X number years of experience. And that's like the catch-22. So many employers want experience, but it's hard to get the experience they want. So like just your general advice, that catch-22, like how do you, and often it's that first job or second. So what's your advice around that catch-22 of needing experience, but having a hard time getting the experience?
Yeah, for sure. And sort of, for me, what I did is I found a volunteering opportunity, right? When I graduated from university, I joined the Peace Corps. I looked for other fellowship opportunities where there weren't any experience requirements. And Peace Corps was the one that said yes. And they trained me, they brought me on board, they gave me a skill set, which then helped me get to the next thing. I honestly think that first job search is absolutely the hardest one that you'll go through over the course of your career, because all you're bringing to the table is your potential. It's risky for an employer to take on somebody who's at the entry level, right? If you were hiring somebody to work at your house, would you want somebody who has, done this for the last 10 years, or somebody who just started in the carpentry business? You'd want to hire somebody with more experience. So it's I know it's so tough for that first job, and I don't have the perfect answer to it, but volunteering, looking for fellowships, looking for those paid internships without experience requirements, they are out there. I built a program like this because I believe in young talent. I believe when you give people, I don't think you need always to have experience, and people can bring a new perspective. But I would really, follow folks like Craig, PCDN, who share these opportunities, and just do your best. But honestly, it is really hard. It's very competitive, and it's just tough to get that first thing. So the other piece of advice I would give is sort of, now it's just easier to start your own thing. If you want to, so obviously we need to get a job to pay the bills, but it's the gig economy. There are side hustles. I taught English over the phone as sort of like a side hustle all the way through college and into Peace Corps. There's probably things you could do to earn money on a part-time basis, that while you do this job search for something more permanent, and just kind of creating your own thing. Are there things you could do? Could you start an initiative now? You don't need permission to do anything. Just start doing the work that you care about, and that may lead to opportunities in the future just by creating value. You can connect with anyone in the world online if you have a connection to the internet. You're on this, you made it to this event, so you clearly have that. That gives you something. You have a leg up, and you can use that to grow your skills, to develop skills even before you get that first job. But anyway, all that aside, I just want to say I'm empathetic to what you're going through, because it is really hard, that first job search. There's no other way to put it. It's just tough out there, and I feel for everybody who's in that situation where you feel like, well, how do I even do this? How do I get in the door? It's not easy. Yeah.
Okay. So we have time for if anyone else wants to put a question in, and I'll ask probably 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up. So one is, can you talk a little bit about your new initiative or your new company and, Chief Talent Agent? So, what challenge are you helping to address, and, how can people obviously follow you on LinkedIn, but how else could people engage, and how are you trying to shake things up?
Yeah, for sure. So, in Hollywood, people, in most industries, the recruiters work for the employers. We start with a vacancy, then we find the person. In Hollywood and sports and a few other industries, it's the opposite. The recruiters, agents in that context, they work for the talent. They get great talent on board, and they help those people find a job. They get paid by the talent. They work for the talent. This new venture of mine, I'm trying to bring this model to the social impact world. I want to work with people who are terrific, people who have, again, this isn't for entry level. This is for senior people who are more senior in their career, maybe from other sectors looking to get into social impact, or you're in social impact and you think you can get to another level beyond where you are today. you're ready for that next challenge, next opportunity, I will work with you directly, help you get that opportunity, help you figure out what it is you want, what your skills are worth, connect you with those opportunities, and help you do your best in the interview process. You know, always really felt passionately about connecting great people with the right opportunities. And in this, as a talent agent, I can do that directly. You know, I don't have to, I can start with the person and I'll just work as hard as I can to find you the job that you're looking for. That's what I'm offering. And, you know, if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, would be useful for you, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me, and you can go on my website, spencercampbelltalent.com. And I'm really excited about it. I've been having so many interesting conversations with people from all over the world. You know, if you know you're great at your job, you're ready for the next thing. I would love to help you get everything you deserve. It really is, find the job you deserve. That's our tagline, and I'm just been so excited about this work. Yeah.
So what do you see as, for people who are whether entry level or mid level in the social impact sector, and there's a million different roles, but where do you see you might encourage people, from your experience you've seen we need a lot more finance people or marketing, or like I mean, obviously it's all context and country specific, but is there any area like you consistently see there's a dearth, or employers have a much harder time finding people for those roles, where you might say it could be worth having those skills? Or if you think what might be coming in the future, like you would encourage people to become, skilled in, I mean, obviously AI, how to use AI, but what are other areas you'd say, hey, these are interesting things you might want to think about getting some knowledge or skills?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for me, over the course of my career, the hardest jobs that we had to fill were jobs that required multiple language skills. People who are bilingual, you speak English and French, you speak English and Spanish. That qualifies you for a lot of things. Language skills are really useful. Technical skills, you know, your monitoring and evaluation roles. You're really good in Stata or R. You know, you can evaluate programs in a very technical way. You have those technical skills. These roles, you know, and again, if I'm having a hard time filling the role, that means for you as a candidate, that's good for you. You have less competition, right? So these are good things. Anything technically minded, you know, programming skills, data analytics skills, those sort of things. The, these these are scarce skills. These are valuable skills. Anybody can learn to do these things. You know, it's hard. Not everybody's going to, but you can begin to make progress towards learning any of these skills online for free. You can find videos on YouTube. You can find free courses. There are ways to pick up these skills completely free of charge, and it really will make a difference in your career prospects, right? Like, again, it gets you into a different market, and embracing that, understanding that, you know, it's not a judgment thing. It's just that there's a different market for different skill sets. So I would look at, you know, at those more technical skills or language skills, and really consider, you know, working hard to add those to your resume, to your skill set. Yep.
Do you have 5 more minutes? Because we got more questions. I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, I do, for sure.
Okay.
I've got another.
So I'll go 5 more minutes. So Kay is asking, what more amorphous qualities, that's a great question, are social impact organizations looking for? Now, I'll make one plug. So if people don't know the company or organization, RippleWorks, amazing, incredible. We're going to probably have someone from there on our podcast in season 11. But they did a report that I've used in my teaching a lot about, I think it's actually old now, but they surveyed a lot of social enterprises and said, what are the sectors, or at least the skill sets that organizations are desperate for, and what prevents social enterprises from growing? And a lot of people assume it's finances. And they said one of the biggest things is sales, like good people. And I mean, so it's worth looking at. So often, like, the assumptions of where we need, so like people who can do sales for social enterprises, and they had a couple other things, but they looked at the talent aspect. But any thoughts for Kay?
Yeah, great question. You know, when I'm hiring for my teams, I really look for people who, you know, are true believers. They really want to be there. They care about the mission. They care about what they're doing. This is advice. Only apply for jobs that you really care about, that you can get excited about, because that comes through in the interview, and you'll just have such a better time if you get the job, if it means something to you, if you can find purpose. So people who are really driven, you know, they can find that purpose. They can find that sort of, they really connect with the mission. Other thing is just people who are self-managers. You can work independently. You can be given a task or a big goal, and then you figure out how to get there yourself. You don't need to be taken through step by step. First do this, then do this, then do this. Those sort of self-directed, independent self-managers, those people tend to go far. Certainly on my teams, and I think in most organizations. People who come to their boss with, "Hey, this thing isn't working right, and I don't like it." Lots of people will do that. Everyone can complain, but the person who can say, "Hey, this thing isn't working right. I think we can do this better. Here are 3 ideas about how we can do it, and here's the research I've done on why idea number 2 is the best one. Do you think we should go forward with this?" That really, bringing that into the way you do your work, that sort of independence and sort of self-management, it really will take you far. Just showing up and caring and being able to look after yourself, that it really puts you ahead of the game.
So what you mentioned Teal, which is a great resource, so please check out Teal, and they have some things for free in terms of job tracking and a lot of really good stuff. What other resources do you encourage people to engage with on impact careers, but also on recruitment in general? So what are your go-to things? Newsletters, websites, apps?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Teal is probably my best recommendation. I think follow interesting people on LinkedIn, whatever it is that you're interested, whatever particular companies or organizations, your specific interest. Find those people who are saying something interesting about it, and follow those people, and maybe even connect with them. Try to have a conversation. I think Glassdoor, of course, if you're a job seeker, you have to be careful. You're looking for trends, not necessarily, you might have one person who's disgruntled. He got laid off because he was, stealing from the company. He's going to leave a 1-star review on Glassdoor, definitely. But if everybody is leaving pretty mediocre reviews with the same thing, that's probably something you should be mindful of. So, doing this research, there's, the internet is your friend. Google is your friend, and doing your research as a candidate during the job search, it's a really important skill to have. And Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Teal, these are the ones I would recommend.
Okay, so my last question before I wrap up is, apart from work, is there any book, movie, something that maybe has nothing to do with work? It could be for upskilling or just be pure fun, but something that you might recommend that you're slowing down with and watching or reading, or just something you say, hey, this is interesting, other people might want to check it out.
Yeah, sure. So I'm really big into language learning. I work with I'm part of like a language learning community, and we get together and have awkward conversations in French so we all can improve. Read easy French books together, and then working with a tutor on italki. It's like a website for connecting with people who want to teach you languages. I love, I think learning another language gives you another lens to see the world. I'm a big fan of it, and I think it's a good use of your time. So that's what I'm into. Yeah.
Okay, so it's italki.
Italki, yeah.
Okay,
so
okay.
you can, italki.com.
So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise and helping to demystify kind of the recruitment process. And, lots of recruiters are not scary. They're really nice people. I mean, occasionally they're scary recruiters. And obviously this could go on a lot longer, but I hope people will check this out. Follow Spencer on LinkedIn, check out the Spencer Campbell Talent Agency, check out PCDN. Again, this will be up as a podcast in 3 or 4 weeks. So please share this with your friends and check out the 100+ other episodes with innovators from impact investing to reducing gender-based violence. Our next 2 podcasts, next one will be on Tuesday with Darius Graham, who works on philanthropy in Baltimore. Really cool foundation. I think they give away about $30 million a year. And then I forgot the exact date, sometime in the week of May 11th, Catalina Kuktoke, who was the former director of Fundación Mi Sangre, which is, people know Juanes the musician, so he's got a foundation. Shakira has a foundation too. So it'll be, and she's an Ashoka fellow, so it'll be super interesting, and lots of other people coming up. And any last thoughts, Spencer, before we end? And hopefully, I know it's almost your weekend over there.
Yeah, no, just thank you so much, everyone who attended. I hope it was helpful. If it wasn't, feel free to complain to me via DM, not publicly, but yeah, please visit spencercampbelltalent.com if you're interested in speaking further. You can take a look at what I'm offering, or don't hesitate to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat with anybody. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you everyone from around the world.